And some of my guests are in. We are able to start as we wait for one more who is supposed to come in. My guests in the studio this morning are Yao Opong. He's a lawyer and he teaches the law at the Central University. Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, grateful to be here.
Will this be your second or first show in 2017 here?
I think this is the second, yes.
This is the second. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Also, Clara Berry Kasati. She is also a lawyer and teaches the law at Gimpa and I think elsewhere. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Must be your first year on the show too.
Yes.
As for you, we haven't had you in a long time and I understand why. Also, Isaac Adongo is MP, Bolga Central, and member of the Finance Committee of Parliament. Isaac, welcome.
Thank you.
Nana Akomia is just stepping into the studio. He is Communications Director of the New Patriotic Party. I've heard many people asking, they're seeking to find his name on one of those lists that's been coming out in recent times. He's sought to urge them to exercise restraint and that he's surely in the team. Good morning to all of you and welcome to the show. As I say, this is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, welcome to the new world. ACAP Compost Fertilizer, truly natural, White Temple Agency. That is a luxury you can afford. And we have, our plate is very full this morning. First, we will go to Parliament and we'll stay there for quite a while because a number of issues have come up. As you know, Otiko Djaba's approval is hanging. We definitely will find out whether the minority's position is justified. And then there's the bribery scandal that is supposed to be probed by Parliament itself. Questions are being raised. The GII, Occupy Ghana, all have issues and questions on that. So why don't we start this way? Let's first go to Parliament straight away and take bits and pieces of what's happened as far as Otiko Djaba's vetting is concerned.
I spoke from my convictions. The former president, John Dramani Mahama, I made the statements that I made as a wake-up call for him. We are building a nation. He was running for re-election, and I felt that the people who should tell him as it is were not telling him as it was. I wasn't banned from Metro. They decided that because he was my brother, they did not want me to speak. And when I talked about him being an embarrassment, I spoke in relation to SADA. SADA is very dear to my heart. My mother is a Northerner. The incidence of poverty is highest in the 3 northern regions. And for a president who comes from the north, who promised to alleviate poverty, what happened to the guinea fowls? It was an embarrassment to me and to the north. The chiefs of the north actually made that statement. And so I don't owe him or you any apology. We are developing and building a nation. I would be the last person to do that because I myself have been a victim of such allegations. It is a misconstrued impression. What I said at the time that Honorable Kennedy Ejapong made the statements, the allegations, I said that Madame Charlotte, because of her position, the first woman to occupy that seat, and the fact that she needed to be like Caesar's wife, above reproach, I said that because of her integrity, there should be an investigation so that her name will be cleared. I never said that I supported the allegation or otherwise. All I called for was an investigation by the National Security or the BNI. As Kwame Nkrumah said, Ake does not build a nation. My answers were very public. and they are on the internet. I categorically said that if it was me, I wouldn't be happy about it. And so there should be an investigation. And I believe that it is in the interest of women that we must be seen as people who are respected for who we are. Nobody questions a man how he got his job, but people always question a woman. But if there's an investigation, she will be cleared. And if it happened to me, I would ask that an investigation should be conducted. And so if anybody thinks that I was supporting one way or the other, I would say that that is propaganda and that is politics.
Be as it may, I would have thought that the majority leader, with his weight and very romantic about the rules, would have known that the appropriate thing is to go through the letter and spirit of Standing Order 109 and subject the outstanding nominee to the rules of voting. And if they so wish, by majoritarian rule, which itself, Mr. Speaker, as you taught us, can encourage mobocracy, mob rule. We have the majority. But Mr. Speaker, to say that the rules of this House are known, we are unable to build consensus. There is only one irresistible conclusion: for them to subject the minister designate for women, gender, and children to vote. Mr. Speaker, that is why cooperation can be good. That is why building consensus can be productive. If the majority leader is convinced, but I know him. And for Mr. Speaker, I've had cause to say that if Parliament and his rules were a woman, he will break his vow on monogamy to insist that the right is done because he's committed to the institutional building of Parliament.
We have to stay, we'll be able to deal with the other 6. And then this first tranche of 6. So we shall have 12. That was the agreement. Unfortunately, they could not submit the report on the other 6. So if you have to stay and just endure about 2-3 hours to vote on just one person, we thought it wasn't necessary.
Was it a case of you, the majority, not really having the numbers to push her through?
That is not true. Did you see how many of them were in the chamber? I don't want us to bulldoze our way through. And then in particular, if we're just going to deal with just one item, when the report on the 6th wasn't ready. That is why I said it wasn't worth the exercise. How do we justify that?
So the appointment committee probably didn't do a very good job in interrogating that particular issue?
Absolutely. That's the issue that I was raising.
So you won't advise Otiko to go ahead and offer this public apology the minority at the money?
I was not there. I don't know the context of usage. And not knowing the context of usage, go and apologize. When you yourself have not been able to extract anything from the lady. If he says that I meant the president to be a fool, you would say that no, but that is unacceptable.
You're welcome. This is Newsfile. And then, yes, I think I'd like to start with you, Adumo. Now, the minority's position, as they canvassed on the floor of Parliament yesterday, was that the reason they are unable to agree to recommend Otiko for approval is number one, that she didn't do her national service. She admitted to that. The question was put to her during the vetting. When last did you speak to your mom? And she said, I spoke to my mom a week before the elections or so. The understanding is that she has problems with her mom and is unable to deal with her. And they feel that all of this is not good enough. And again, thirdly, that she spoke, used some language on the president, which was not palatable, the ex-president, that the ex-president was wicked, that he was evil, and they wanted her to apologize for that, retract and apologize. She said she will not apologize. these could be the three main reasons for which they felt that she's unfit for that office of minister. Is this really justified?
Yeah, good morning to my colleague panelists and to your cherished viewers. I think first we need to understand that now we're building a team for Ghana. And so you want to have ministers of state that you are able to deal with all manner of people. And so the vetting generally is meant to come up with certain qualities that you expect a minister to have. One is you want to test the temperament of the minister to be able to find out whether he can deal with pressure, he can deal with criticisms, whether he can accept his faults or her faults in instances where the person needs to do so. And so you'll find some questions that are targeted at achieving that. Okay, you want to be sure that this is a unifying person. And for a ministry particularly to do with children, women, children, gender, children and social protection, you are dealing with the vulnerable in society, you are dealing with the poor, you are dealing with inclusiveness. And so you would want to find out, assuming this person comes across a frustrated person who for purpose of this discussion, because of the situation the person finds himself, could actually irritate you. How will this person respond? So these are some of the issues that you are dealing with. We are dealing with a minister who would be a role model for children and for the youth. So you don't want to encourage things that you don't expect the youth to pick up. So for instance, if you find a minister who is comfortable to call a president evil, I mean, something you can't substantiate. I don't know how you're going to convince anybody that the president, I mean, the former president is evil, something like that. Or you say the president is wicked, and you can't have a way of substantiating it.
She explained. You didn't like her.
Yeah, because she can't be speaking for me. I'm from the north, and I'm very proud of the president. I mean, if you want to give the verdict of the people of the north, you saw it in the elections. He was overwhelmingly voted for by the people of the north.
Okay, for the benefit of those who are watching us and who may not have had, who may not know what Otiko Djaba's explanation was. Her explanation was simple, that she still stands by that because the president is the one who superintended the wastage and the corruption in the SADA, program. The SADA program was meant to alleviate poverty in the northern part of this country or the savannah areas. And you all know the story about the SADA story, really. So that is what she felt about. She was passionate about how money was wasted and how money went into private pockets. She says the president superintended that, and she was right in calling the president, someone who had you call it a wicked heart or so.
No, she said that the president is an embarrassment to the north.
Yes, an
and
embarrassment.
I'm saying that I'm from the north. And the Northerners didn't vote to say that he's an embarrassment. They voted for him. And that was to say that he's not an embarrassment to them. And I'm saying that these are subjective matters that I don't think he is comfortable if somebody, any young person met him here somewhere and said, you are evil. And say, well, that is my right, I have said it. Will she be comfortable? We want to build a country of patriotic people. You think that if you don't do national service, it's right, and you expect that we should encourage the youth to be patriotic, to offer at least 1 year of their time to serve this country. And so that example, is that an example that we want to promote? All I'm trying to say is that, yes, we all say things in the spur of the moment. We are given the opportunity at a bigger platform where we are stepping into the shoes of serving the whole of Ghana. I listened to Honorable Eslowusu, for instance, a very vibrant person. We saw some of the skirmishes with Mutala and all of that. But you could see the demeanor. You could see that this is a person who understands what she's going into and therefore was willing to moderate her temperament. And she came across as somebody that you could trust to handle a ministry, because what you hear of her is not exactly the minister that you see of her. And that is the principle. Sometimes the influence is to say that, well, I have the numbers, I'll get the majority. But you see, that is a house of records. You don't want to go down in history as somebody of that kind of person. And so when you retract, I don't see how somebody, a very respected person like Honorable Safumafu, for instance, or a very accomplished person like Ajako, would want to have a consensus, because it puts him in a very good light. And he's won that reputation, he's won that image, and he has to jealously protect it. And that is the reason he will retract certain statements. It is not because he is inferior by doing that. And so when you are somebody who finds
Jako and Osafo did not retract statements that you wanted them to retract.
They did.
They did not.
They did. That is the information we have. They did. Yes.
Okay. The information that is public is that they did not. And on the basis of that, the minority could not agree on consensus, that they should be approved by consensus. And so the approval was supposed to go through a process of what? Voting for the majority. Yeah. In Otiko's case, it is the case that they simply could not even first recommend her for approval. So that's a separate matter.
Yes, but I'm saying that they were more reconciliatory. I can tell you that for a fact, that at the end, after the hula baloo, they were more reconciliatory. Okay, what we see here is somebody who says, even if I insult you, I'm standing by it. Okay, and that is not good enough. For me, I would be very happy to see her in government, because how many women from the north get to serve in those positions? And for somebody to come from an area where gender representation, particularly at the highest level of decision making, is an issue, you find it very disheartening that you are unable to say, I support this person for the role that we should be very proud that she's been put there. And today we have her, we have Ajay Alima, and we should be very happy.
As far as the minority is concerned, minus the national service issue, minus that she had a problem with her mom, an aged woman, and I've heard some of your members actually on the committee speak to the fact that she's going to deal with aged people, and the way she's dealt with her mom, according to you guys, she will not be able to deal with the aged, because even her mom, she's fighting her, and she claims that she spoke to her mom the last time, you know, was before the elections, and she's not spoken to the mom again. And even that, Yelechire says that she lied. We don't know why he says she lied. We don't know if the mom has told Yelechire that she was not being truthful. So that's, apart from the national service issue, apart from the fact that she has problems with her mom, according to you, apart from her refusal to retract and apologize for the comments that, you know, are attributed to her, she's qualified?
Of course. I mean, what is the Constitution? What does the Constitution about qualification of a minister? Somebody qualified to become an MP, and don't forget she ever contested to become an MP, so she's qualified. Okay. But the qualification as per the Constitution in relation to you being qualified to be a minister, if that were the case, we won't be vetting ministers. Okay. Because there are other considerations that must be brought on board, and that is the reason why even ministers who have fulfilled the requirements are still vetted. Yes. You want
those considerations, Clara, he says, includes the moral questions of morality and character. What do you say about how Otiko Djaba, you know, matter is being treated?
I must confess that I didn't have the opportunity to watch her vetting in full. So the first time I'm seeing it is when you played it here. Right. But I have heard the discussions. We're trying to get the minority. They spoke on the floor. Okay. And they stated their reasons for not approving her. Okay. And these are what I've tried to recanvass for all of you. Okay. That she said the president was a wicked man with a devil's heart. Okay. And she didn't retract. Okay. Among the other issues. Okay, so the three issues are the issues with her mom, the comments she made about the ex-president, and then the national service issue. That is so. For me, the issue about her mom, for me, is a private matter, and which I wouldn't want to comment on. I as a matter of principle, I do not agree that, I think everybody should be entitled to some space of privacy. So I do not agree that we should intrude into people's lives to the extent of their relationship with their moms. There is a lot we do not know about what it is between her and her mom, and I think we are not. The allegation is that the mom supports the ex-president and she doesn't agree. That's a rumor, and I don't think it is. I think it is unfair for us to expect her to come and tell us into detail what it is between her and her mom. So I think she should be entitled to that private space, and I do not think that her relationship with her mom should be part of the issues we consider as to whether or not she should be appointed a minister. Secondly, on the issue of her comments about the ex-president, I think those ones are largely a matter of perspective. And I do not think that we have right and wrong perspectives I would leave that to everybody and their value system, and then probably what the public value system would be. What I would comment on is the issue about the national service, because that one does raise legal issues. And apart from raising legal issues, I think that it also does raise other issues of leadership. Leadership in the sense that I think that as lawyers, as a lawyer, I mean, lawyers can argue about everything. Lawyers can, it is very rare to find two lawyers agreeing on a position. Otherwise, we wouldn't have courts, because we have a court, sometimes two lawyers will disagree. If you have more than one judge, even judges disagree. So you have a majority view and then a dissenting view. So we can have the two, we can have the legal issues, which I will look at. And then I would also look at the leadership issues, because I think that as a nation, we should have certain minimum standards, what we call values, in our national or body politics that we would want to canvass and demonstrate leadership. Now, with respect to the national service issue, I have heard the arguments that once she qualifies, there's the constitutional requirement, and then, of course, you cannot wish away the Ghana National Service Act. Now, of course, although the Constitution is the supreme law, it is only when an act of parliament and an inferior legislation is in conflict with the Constitution that it gives way. If it is not in conflict with the Constitution, it stands. And as a matter of principle, and in fact a legal requirement, it must be obeyed. Now, I would want to go by a step-by-step approach to this legal issue so that everybody can draw their own conclusions. Usually when issues become a matter of, I guess people take their corners and everybody's standing very hard to wherever position they belong. And sometimes we do lose sight of the fact that what is the issue? The issue is that she's alleged to have said on the floor of Parliament that she has not done national service.
Because at the time she was out of the country.
She was out of the country. Okay. So the issue is, does that affect her appointment as a minister? I would say let's go to Section 7 of the Ghana National Service Act. Now, if you come to Section 7 of the Ghana National Service Act, it puts a responsibility on two categories of persons. The two categories of persons in that act are an employer and an employee. The responsibility on the employee is that if you haven't done your national service, and of course, national service applies to all citizens above 18 years. What Section 7 is, the obligation that Section 7 puts on an employee is that if you haven't done national service, you cannot be, you ought not to take up an employment, whether in public or private enterprise. So it applies across board. It's not limited only to public offices. It is both public and private. Section 7 also places an obligation on the employer. What it tells the employer in subsection 2 is that if you are an employer, whether private or public employer, you must ascertain from a person you intend to employ whether or not the person has done their national service. If the person has not done the national service, the second obligation is that you must inform the board accordingly that this person has not done national service. Now, if the information is given to the board that the person has not done national service, Section 8 provides a relief. The relief is that the person can be exempted from doing national service, or the board can postpone the doing of the national service. Otherwise, then the person must be employed within the national service scheme, which means that wherever they are, they should be taking national service allowance whilst they do their job. That is the requirement of Section 7. Now, that Section 7 is Section 7 inconsistent with any provision of the Constitution? Absolutely not. We can split head. We have the qualification of an MP, and then we have the qualification for a minister. The qualification for a minister is that you must qualify to be an MP, not that you must necessarily be an MP.
Right.
Now, does that mean that every minister is an employee? Absolutely not. Mangoes, oranges, and apples are fruits, but an orange is not an apple, and an apple is not an orange. It's the similar thing that applies to the constitutional provisions about the NP and the minister. Remember that a minister is appointed, and a minister can be fired by the president, but an MP cannot be appointed, and an MP cannot be fired by the president. The MP occupies their seat. It's a parliamentary seat. It's not. So in that situation, they are not being appointed by the president and disappointed by the president. But now fix that in Section 7. By appointing a minister, the president is an employer of somebody. It just says that the person you are employing must meet another criteria. Now leave that aside. If we are going to say that once you qualify to be an MP, you qualify to be a minister, of course, not everybody who qualifies to be an MP is going to be appointed. Are we prepared to make the argument that if you are somebody who is going to be employed, whether in the private or public sector, and you qualify to be an MP, you must ignore Section 7 of the National Service Act? If we are prepared to make that conclusion, that is fine. But then that comes back to the question of leadership. We have always said that Africa suffers leadership problems. I don't think that leadership comes only from political office or only public office. It comes from everywhere. So as a matter of leadership, what do we want to demonstrate? I think that the issue of her not doing national service is an issue that can be resolved easily without having to go back and forth and then this cantankerous thing that is being done. Of course, the board can be put in place. The information can be given to the board. The relief is provided for in Section 8. The board can take a decision. So there is opportunity to comply with the National Service Act.
So what are you saying? As far as you're concerned, not doing the national service doesn't disqualify her?
Yes, because as a minister, you are an employee.
Okay. Yeah.
And there is an employer and an employee. Somebody employs you.
What do you say?
So yes, it does.
Well, thank you very much. I'll take it up from there.
This position of the NDC minority, people are saying is something they are doing for political mischief and political propaganda advantage. But I can say that I am privileged to have known that even within their party, if you want to contest as an MP, if you are shown not to have done your national service, they disqualify you. Before the 2012 elections, one of their guys wanted to contest as MP, and because he had not done national service, even though he had been DC and so on, he had not done national service, they sought to disqualify him. And I had to represent the gentleman, and I made the point that he was not to be disqualified by virtue of that because of the provisions of the Constitution. So it's a position they even take even at the party level.
As the NDC?
Yes, the NDC.
Okay, right. Okay, so I'll take it up from there. I hold the view that the matters that may amount to the determinants for the qualification of a member of parliament are as outlined in Article 94.
Yes.
Now, when you look at the issue of whether or not a member of parliament is an employee, I would like to look at Section 26 of the State Proceedings Act, Act 555. And it defines employee, it says employee in relation to the state includes any public officer or a member of the armed forces. I'll just leave it at that. Who is a public officer? Article 295 of the Constitution defines public office. Therefore, any body in that office is a public officer. To include an office, the emoluments attached to which are paid directly from the consolidated fund or from funds provided by Parliament. We know that the emoluments of members of Parliament under Article 71 are paid or charged directly from the consolidated fund. So in my view, for this purpose alone, we can say that a member of Parliament, for the period that he serves as a member of Parliament, is a public officer, a public office holder, and by extension, under Act 555, an employee of the state.
So he's a minister?
So he's a minister.
Okay.
And in my view, I will not draw a distinction respectfully between a minister in terms of qualification and that of a member of Parliament, because 94 is very clear. Now, 94 states clearly that one of the determinants for qualification is any other law which for the time being is in force and is not inconsistent with the Constitution.
Yes.
Yes. I hold the view that if we want to highlight or depend on that as one of the grounds, then the grounds may be at large. But if you hold that, then you want to bring in the national service aspect as part of it. And if you hold the view that I do hold, then in that case, then members of parliament shall, for the purposes of this act, be deemed, or the constitution be deemed to, and the Act 555 be deemed to be employees, and therefore require to have served as national service persons.
Okay.
Then you ask, have we all, or even all the members of parliament, are they able to convince us that they have all complied with this act? Don't forget that Section 4 of Act 426, the National Service Act.
Section 4.1.
4.1 states clearly that not only must you serve for 2 years, 6 months of that you should have served on the Ghana Armed Force, or as a member of the, or have been served
military training.
Military training. Thank you. I didn't want to worry by going to the act. I would have wished that, and I will still make the declaration or request that the National Service Scheme, or that institution, and I'm making this as a citizen active spectator, to furnish us with the list of members of parliament who have complied with this particular provision. Because non-compliance with it under Section 7 amounts to an offense.
Yes.
And not only must you then not qualify to be a member of parliament, you suffer going to prison or pay a fine for it.
Going to prison for about 5 years.
That is why pushing this so-called any other law not inconsistent with the constitution, and therefore bringing in the national service, they will be problematic.
So what's the point really? Because if you are making the point about Section 4.1 of the National Service Act, then it means that almost every one of us who did national service did not comply with the law, because the law says you're even supposed to do the national service for 2 years. Yes. And out of the 2 years, 6 months is supposed to be military training. Yes. And you know that that's not how the national service has been done, conducted.
Well, this section 4, which deals with duration, states that when you are said to have completed and complied with the National Service
Before Act, you can be issued the certificate.
The certificate, which is prima facie evidence that you have complied with the entire act, you may have done so. But then once the certificate is issued, the question is, can the National Service Board also waive that mandatory provision?
Okay. For the purposes of our discussion here, you and Clara agree that not doing the national service is something that should disqualify Otiko Djaba, correct?
Well, I'm saying that, number one, until Parliament takes a decision, at this stage, there's still an opportunity for her to comply. One, Section 8, which she read, and even within Section 7, it says a person may not engage in national service, may not be an employee unless he has completed the national service mandatory provision, and also or with prior permission. So even when he has not served, but he has prior permission from the board.
Okay.
Then let me just quickly. We know that.
So you have said the same thing.
No, just in conclusion.
You have said the same thing, that she's disqualified for not serving.
I'm not saying she's disqualified.
She can remedy.
I'm saying that pending her taking advantage of part of Section.
When she appeared before the House, she had not gone and availed herself of the exemption.
Excuse me, sorry. The Constitution doesn't talk about vetting. The Constitution talks about approval.
All right, let's not get there. Let's not get there.
Conclude.
Otherwise,
the Constitution talks about approval. It is not the committee that approves of a person becoming a minister. It is the Parliament. And so, please, just a second. And so until Tuesday, when the report of the committee is presented, she cannot be said to be disqualified. In the same vein where a person who wants to be a member of parliament cannot be said to be disqualified until the Electoral Commission issued
Clara
the
wants
writ.
a quick intervention.
Just a quick yes. I would actually back calls that all the MPs should provide at least evidence of their national service certificate, whether or not they have served national service. Because as we said, the Act actually says whether private or public. And then secondly, the issue of the military service and whether or not I think that if you look at Section 6 of the National Service Act, it says that a citizen who satisfactorily completes the period of national service shall be awarded a certificate of national service. I think that once a person has been awarded the certificate, it means that the National Service Secretariat deems that the person is satisfied with.
Okay.
So yes, I think if you have the certificate, then you are covered.
The issue of
okay.
Can I just
thank you?
Because I
thank you.
Get the
now, just hold on.
to
Just hold on.
that.
Now, Nana, what do you say? There are many people who say, "What's the big deal? She's being asked to retract." And in fact, when you listen to some of the guys in Parliament, they would not have made an issue of this national service thing, but for the fact that she insists that the president was an embarrassment, he was wicked with the devil's heart in the way he dealt with the Jida, what do you call it, Sada situation, okay? And, the other matter of how she must have handled her mom.
Thank you, Samson. I think the matter of the political statements she made in the lead up to the elections, those really are the issues, the main issues against Madam Otiko at the vetting committee of Parliament. Now, this business of political statements, I mean, all of us, even though we are political opponents, we are also citizens of Ghana. We may even be friends. So we normally would not set out to denigrate each other because of political campaigns, because all of us are friends, really. So if somebody makes a statement that the other person deems that statement to be offensive, it's up to the person who made a statement to agree that, well, looking at your complaint, my statement is offensive, and so I withdraw. It happens all the time. But if the person who has been so accused believes that his or her statements are not offensive, then it becomes a subjective matter. It's not a technical matter, it's not a legal matter, it's just a matter of different interpretations. Madam Otiko is supposed to have described President Mahama as a wicked president and somebody who is devilish. And her basis for those descriptions are that President Mahama superintended the waste of public monies meant to alleviate poverty in the most deprived areas of our country, especially when President Mahama himself is a native of those regions. And she, Otiko too, is a native of those regions. I saw my brother here trying to say that he's a Northerner. Otiko too is a Northerner. Now, in her view, for President Mahama, who comes from those regions, to oversee the waste of monies meant to alleviate poverty in those regions, she believes that President Mahama is a wicked politician, and a politician whose heart is not in the right place. As far as she's concerned, those are the adequate descriptions based on President Mahama's omissions or commissions. The NDC finds it offensive. Say that, why would you say that the man is a wicked man? She says he's a wicked man because she's overseeing the dissipation of public funds meant to relieve the plight of the poorest of the poor. So he's a wicked person. So it's a matter of interpretation now. If she says that she doesn't find them offensive, that's her interpretation, which is different from the interpretation of the minority, and which will also be different from the interpretation of the majority. So it will go to a debate and vote based on the different interpretations. And I have no doubt that the majority in Parliament do not find Otiko Djaba's comments offensive. But the point is that they do not find so because of their interpretation, the way they are looking at it. The minority finds it offensive because of the way they also are looking at it. The larger issue, Samson, is that how do we deal with statements that we deem to be offensive? Because in the run-up to elections in this country, many politicians engage in statements against each other that are the persons to whom those statements were made against will deem offensive. How do you deal with that? The appointments committee hearings cannot be the tool to deal with so-called offensive statements. It cannot. So let's have a holistic process to deal with statements that we deem offensive. It was a good thing that the Professor Kakari and his people engaged in that exercise in the run-up to elections. It's a good
Media
thing.
Foundation for West
Media
Africa.
Foundation.
It helps checking insulting language.
Yes, it helps us to define what is insulting language, what may be offensive language, and so on, and it constrains politicians. It's a good thing. But at the appointments committee, it just becomes political interpretation, because somebody would be able to list many statements made by NDC politicians that they also deem offensive. How do they get redress? You take somebody like Dr. Baumia. He's been described in so many terms that are completely offensive as far as the NPP and he, Dr. Baumia, is concerned. You had ministers of state alluding to how the money spent on his education has been wasted. You had ministers of state saying that his thinking is inferior to that of the people from the IMF and the World Bank. The NPP deemed this offensive. You had the flag bearer of the NPP at that time being described in terms including murder, which we also see as clearly offensive. Now, if you don't get a chance to appear before the appointments committee, then those offensive statements made, they stand. And because you are before the appointments committee, you should retract yours. That cannot be right. So we have to have a holistic process that would allow us to deal with offensive statements, and that would allow us, or those people who made those statements, to get a chance to clear themselves or clean the slate as it is. And not just because one is fortunate or unfortunate to appear before the vetting committee.
The minority says that she's unfit because, number one, she will not be able to work with the aged. She is not someone who is tolerant and can forgive, because they have information that points to why they ask the question, when last did you speak to your mom? That if she cannot forgive her own mother, how is she going to be able to handle the ministry?
Well, it's like saying to somebody, a minister of state or a public official, that because his child has been wayward in school, he cannot be a public official because he has not been able to constrain the behavior of his child. And we've had instances in this country where major political leaders, we've had reports of how their children have been wayward. And I don't know if we'll regard it as fair that because those children have been wayward in school or in somewhere else, those politicians should be brought down because of whatever relationship that has not existed between them and their children. But you see, in this Otiko matter, you don't know what the matter is. Is it that she has, because I would have wished that the question was put in a different way that would elicit better information. For example, if the question had been put that, we understand that you are not on good terms with your mother, is it true or not? And if you are not on good terms with your mother, how do you propose to be on good terms with people, the elderly, who will be of her age? But the question was asked in a manner that, I don't want to use motives, but if you say to somebody, when's the last time you spoke to your mother? The public won't understand what you are driving at. The nominee will give you a straightforward answer. I spoke to my mother a month ago, and that's the end of the matter. And now everybody is speculating.
I think actually she had asked the chairman of the committee about 2 times whether that was also a question for her to answer. And then the committee chair then asked her that, you should go ahead and answer. I don't know who prepares some of these nominees to go before that place, but she was not under obligation to answer that question anyway.
Yes.
Now, you said you wanted to say something before we wrap up this part of the discussion.
Yes.
What else has to be said?
I think my colleague mentioned the fact that, you know, the appointment doesn't talk about vetting. Parliament has its own rules. We have our own standing orders, and we have our own procedure. So when it is referred to a committee to do a job and report to the plenary for discussion, that is part of the process. And so Parliament respects the vetting committee, I mean the appointment committee, and the work that is done there. That is why a lot of effort is made to make sure that the work that is done there when it comes to the floor, if there's a consensus, 90% of the work is done.
He's coming from a purely legal background on it. Yes, if he doesn't explain the background to it, you may not understand.
No, I understand him. But what I'm trying to say is that we are masters of our own rules. So you can't say that if we have our established procedure. For instance, you bring a budget, it has to go to the finance committee. You won't say it was brought to Parliament. In any case, those are the structures within Parliament to deal with the issue. So for me, I don't think that's an... But
from the minority, if she apologizes now, makes a retraction or an apology of sorts, it's okay.
In our view, we have nothing against Otiko Djaba.
What
we have against her is that she's not demonstrated the right temperament. And are you getting the point? We believe that she's actually set up herself for failure because she is demonstrating that the ministry that she's going, she doesn't know what is required to handle that ministry. I have done a lot of work in social protection. I have consulted on a social protection project, and I know
one second.
That is what I mean.
You don't think she showed the right temperament because she didn't retract.
The point is that you cannot meet a committee and be so arrogant.
Arrogant because she didn't retract.
Arrogant because she feels that it is her right to insult and get away with it. And we believe that already, that's what she feels, but that's what we feel.
Yes.
That is an insult.
So it's different interpretations.
Anyway, when you were speaking, I didn't interrupt. So when we started like that, I'm
so
sure
some of your members actually are saying,
get messy.
Some of your members are actually saying that she refused to retract. I've heard Perpo and the others make these comments that, and also Electoral, who is on the committee, make these comments that it's about really the retraction and to admit that the statements were harsh, the comments were unpalatable, and that she's not a good example to women and children. Is it good example to simply give in because you are being coerced, you are being forced? She says, these are my convictions, I stand by them. Is that not rather the example you require?
And your convictions
of children?
Listen, your convictions are not good enough. Let me tell you, when the issue of the National Service came up, Haruna made a point on the floor that there is a legal remedy.
Which is good for the exemption.
Yeah, he said there's a legal remedy. So what it meant is that we are not really interested in making sure that Otiko Djaba doesn't work. All we are interested in is that she should understand that she's becoming a minister of state for the country and not for the MPP.
Be frank, so with our viewers and listeners. There are those who criticize you that you are also very peeved about her, additionally, because while she was being vetted and she was asked of a certain conduct that she would need to put up about how not to use, vituperative language, she said the phenomenon of babies with sharp teeth will not be promoted or should be discarded. And that was a clear reference to Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, who was sitting right there. And so they stopped her and they said she shouldn't make that reference.
Listen.
That one really hurts you guys, and that's why you don't really want to
What is babies with sharp teeth? What exactly is that? I don't know what that is.
It's Jerry Rawlings who gave us that
And
expression.
It means what? It means what? Can you tell me the meaning? Then I can ask whether she supports that kind of meaning. What does that mean? It's derogatory.
That younger people who
with sharp teeth,
are insulting of elders.
Insulting of elders. And she is sitting there, she's deemed to be insulting of people. She says she doesn't hold that view, but she thinks that Ablakwa holds that view, that he being referred to as babies with sharp teeth, he accepts it. And so how can you in one breath accept that he, Ablakwa, agrees that is an insult, but you don't agree?
My last question to you will be, for a very brief answer, will be that some of your critics also are saying that you, the minority, were first to point out to us Ghanaians that the Transition Act, Presidential Transition Act, should not supersede the Constitution. And so when the president was going about making new appointments and questions were being raised by the Nanado team of the transition, and they were raising those issues, Haruna Idrisu and co, Mahama Yarga wrote letters and were saying that the president was following the constitution. If the constitution says you can be a member and doesn't require you to have done national service, why are you using the National Service Act to, you know, superintend it over the constitution?
Is it a conclusion we've had listening to the legal panel, members you have on this panel? Is that a conclusion?
Those are their views.
No, but that is then you.
That is also your view.
That is also your view. It's not my view. That is your view, because I disagree with you. I disagree with you because you are taking a position. The position is that what we are asking is in violation of the constitution.
It's a question.
It's a position. And I'm saying that I have listened to legal arguments here. And I'm comfortable with what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with it? Then let's go with it.
That's your answer. Yeah. Thank you.
I think that in the same vein, I think the question also is whether or not we are permitted to add to the disqualification criteria. If you look at, or if you want to make reference to some problem between a nominee and her mother, or that she has engaged in an act which will not be consistent with the basic standards of morality. Does the Constitution provide for that? Look, the closest the Constitution goes as one of the disqualification criteria is whether a person has been convicted for moral turpitude, and that is Article 94C, 2C. It is not for nothing that the framers use the word convicted, which means that there should have been criminal proceedings, at least in a court of competent jurisdiction. An analogous one is the one that applies to at least Supreme Court judges. They must demonstrate moral character and integrity. It doesn't say that for a person to qualify to be a Supreme Court justice, he should have been convicted.
Okay,
but
the reference to moral turpitude is that moral turpitude is supposed to refer to an act or behavior that gravely violates the sentiment or accepted standard of the community.
I wanted to ask if I can get some clarification.
Let's move on. And
just a little clarification from him. Parliament can vote to reject a candidate despite all the qualifications. What will be your view?
On what basis? I don't think that Parliament.
If you bring a report to the floor and we vote and we say we are not approving the person, we don't have to give a reason.
No.
And so when we vote against the person, what will be your position?
Parliament itself.
And so the fact that you qualify,
I thought you asked me a question.
I
thought you asked a question. Let me directly answer.
Yes,
what I'm saying is that Parliament cannot engage in an illegality or unconstitutional act.
What is the illegality?
We don't allow me to answer. Then just don't direct it to me. Okay. I'm saying that the Constitution says that for a person to qualify to be a minister,
what do you say to what you just said?
So then you just Parliament do that.
How many members of Parliament would have qualified by now?
Then we should wait to Parliament.
Guys, yes.
So what do you say to Parliament?
Let's see what answer Clarence will have for you.
Exactly.
What he says. They can disqualify you without any reason.
No, not that you will vote not to approve you.
Yeah, they will disapprove you without any reason.
Exactly.
What would you say?
Well, even though the Constitution doesn't specifically state that you should give a reason, you are occupying a public office, and then you are subject where you have a discretion to exercise your discretion within certain limits. So it is expected that if Parliament Parliament has a right to approve or not approve.
Exactly.
But if they exercise that right, it is expected that they will comply with the relevant constitutional provisions that requires them to exercise their discretion, not capriciously, not arbitrarily, but fairly. For which reason, at least they must give reasons to their constituents, the Ghanaian public, as to the reasons why they have withheld a particular.
Like the EC cannot disqualify a candidate because they feel so. Okay. Now.